How's it going? Thank you. I was nervous no one was going to woo, so I appreciate it. We have a
We
very-
could woo better than that.
Yeah,
Come
see?
on now. We told you it was a concert. You thought this
No.
was tech. It's the music festival.
See, so we're already going to have an amazing talk with Fonz Terrell of Spill. Fonz has a very interesting story. So we actually covered Fonz. He was on our cover, November 2024. His history is so interesting and his future is even more. So let's kind of get into it. You worked at Twitter. Obviously, it's not called Twitter anymore. We know someone else runs it now. When you had been let go from Twitter, you decided you did not want a platform like that. So you branched out, you created your own in Spill. Do you want to just give a little background story to kind of how that got going?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for sticking around. Shout out, does anybody here on the Spill app right now? Do we have any Spillionaires in the building? Okay. If you're not a Spillionaire yet, get on it now. You're going to want to take content. No, but yeah, my background, I've led social media prior to Twitter actually at Showtime, HBO, Sony Music. So I've been to South by Southwest quite a lot. And we used to have like the Twitter house back in the day. OGs, real ones will know. Yeah, we know. And so I love being here, and it's just crazy to be here for my own company for the first time. So, yeah, my background at Twitter. So I led social media for about 3.5 years, from the end of 2019 all the way up until the acquisition by Elon Musk. So think about a job that you start at the beginning of the pandemic, then George Floyd's murder, then an insurrection, then a hostile takeover by the richest man in the world. It was pretty chill, right? So it got me ready for being an entrepreneur. No better training, I think, than going through just constant crisis and survival and not knowing which end is up for a long time. But the inspiration for Spill specifically really came from, my passion has always been at the intersection of culture and technology. So I was super thrilled to be at HBO during the Game of Thrones, Insecure, Westworld, the beginning of the Euphoria years, where you could see how the communities that were actually on social having conversations about the shows were more powerful than the people actually watching them on linear, right? And that was sort of a revelatory experience because it really was consistent. And even when you looked at anybody that watched Game of Thrones and would tweet at the same time, there was all these hashtags like Dem Thrones and all that stuff, and it was just an entirely different experience. And I was like, who's driving this? And invariably, and this goes all across the world, it's the communities that are often most marginalized in that particular society that are driving fandoms, that are ultimately becoming what we now call the creator economy, not because they were like, ooh, we're going to make a bunch of money out of this, but that it's a need, right? We are all social human beings, and when you can't find people that are like you or are passionate about the things that you're passionate about, you need these online tools. You need to expand and get creative. So that became my passion, was like, who's driving the Nicki Minaj Stan account? All these people. I was really passionate about that. And so I got to know a lot of these creators, and two things was, really, evident from the beginning. One, these creators are so active, so we'll talk about black women first and foremost. Shout out just to black women in general. Make some noise for black women. Black women drove what we know as Black Twitter, right? And it was really a combination of, advocacy, humor, political activism, agency, just speaking truth in spaces that people never had heard before, right? And so black women are driving almost all of these like K-pop fandoms, right? Your most favorite TV show, any music artist, CPG products, it's almost always black women behind it. And then the queer community as well. At the same time, these communities who use these platforms the most, have the most, engagement and, drive all this culture, are the most attacked universally. And when you look at the data, when we started Spill 2 years ago, it was bad, right? Today, and I encourage everybody, go download the Anti-Defamation League report on this, quote me on this. 1 out of every almost 4 Americans who uses social media today is attacked with some form of harassment or hate speech. And this is all platforms. And when it's black women, particularly, and the queer community, that jumps by 100%. So it's insane. Like, this is literally something that we've come to accept as normal, that we shouldn't. It's like literally a hate crime. And that was the core inspiration for Spill, to just start by building for these communities, solving for those problems first. And we felt that that would make an incredible platform that anyone could benefit from.
Yeah, I think, you bring up community, and we even had discussions about communities and how important it is to build one and create one and be your authentic self with it. So we're just curious with Spill, there's so many communities. What do you find in Spill that is successful for the people as the creators creating content on Spill? And what are they doing to really uplift these communities? Yes, it's the content, and yes, you mentioned like black women are really driving it, but what exactly are they doing that, keeps people engaged?
Yeah, I think the first thing, as everybody in here who's an entrepreneur or has been involved with a startup knows, you go into the startup thinking, we're building this. And then you put it in the hands of people and they're like, no, actually you were building that, right? And so for us, I was really focused on being just a trusted source of real-time information, real-time conversation, being the place that you're going to find out, about the Drake and Kendrick latest battle. You're going to find out about it on Spill. You're going to find out, all this great information that maybe other places aren't focused on. But actually what has happened, and what, to your point about community, that we've really seen thrive on Spill, is people are making connections. People are making friendships. They're building relationships. We have some Spillionaires here who I've never met in person. I'm so happy you're here. Who have started organizing meetups. So there was Houston Spill and Austin Spill and Spilladelphia and Silicon Valley. There's a couple that we that met on Spill. I don't know, when we first launched in 2023. They got married last summer. Wow. They got pregnant 3 months after that, and I think the baby's due literally in 4 weeks.
Their middle name is going to be Spill.
Spillerina, we call her, whatever. And it's just incredible. So I think that really goes to the fundamental problem that all that hate speech and stuff that I talked about is really obfuscating, which is connection. Mm-hmm. We are so isolated, right? The Surgeon General in 2023 put out this report, the old Surgeon General, not the current one. About how the social isolation epidemic in this country is akin to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Wow. That's how much we are not spending time with friends, building relationships, and especially for the younger generation post-pandemic, they don't even have those skills yet. They weren't even allowed to develop them. So digital platforms are actually the first point of entry. It's okay, I got to vet you before I'm going to hang out or I'm going to go do something in person. So we're actually seeing Spill as a community building platform, and our creators are really community builders, and that's who we're building for.
No, I love that, because I think, and I'm sure most of you are on social media, you probably follow a lot of people that you actually don't interact with in real life or have a connection with, so it's great that Spill is really building those connections. You talk a bit about, how you're building these communities, the past of Twitter, for example, in terms of hate speech. We see now with the political landscape, some policies have been put into effect at certain platforms that, they're not doing fact checking anymore, or they're not flagging hate speech. Can you go into a little bit of how Spill is kind of protecting their users with the trust and safety?
Yeah, I think the first myth that we wanted to debunk is that you can't actually build social platforms without the hate speech and all of that coming to dominate. I think that was sort of conventional wisdom. It felt like this unsolvable problem, and we worked very hard, and there were some people who were really passionate, particularly at Twitter, about trying to solve this. But if you do not have buy-in from the very top of the organization, all through the product teams and the trust and safety teams, nothing's going to change. And so really the quote that motivated me was, I love this, from Buckminster Fuller. If you want to change a system, you're not going to change it from within. You need to design a new one that renders the old one obsolete. So we really looked at it from 3 levels. First is policy. When you're building social platforms, you're really nation building. It's that serious. So you actually need laws, right? And people will behave in accordance with the laws that you set. But if you say, oh, okay, the laws are very vague, or, we're going to change them all the time, people will just do what they can get away with. So our policies, if you go to spill.com/community guidelines, we work with the top trust and safety experts in the field, and they're very clear. We don't mince words. Do not F with any of these historically marginalized communities, plain and simple, or you're gone. We're not going to hide you in an algorithmic bunker somewhere. We're going to say, this is probably not the place for you. You can go somewhere else for that. 2 is the enforcement, and that's really a combination of technology and just, frankly, the will of the leadership. So we built one of the first large language model systems for content moderation that's trained by the communities that get the most hate. And so we have about a year and a half of data now to prove that on Spill, there is 66% less hateful content by percentage than any other platform that's out there right now. And we take great pride in that, right? But it's hard. Like, you have to be committed. And then I think the third thing, going back to what we were saying earlier, is community. Once you normalize those values, right? It's like if people came into Founders House and were like, I'm going to take my shirt off. And then people start taking their shirts off. And it's like, why? Who let them do the shirts? And then like you come back at the end of the weekend and like, all right, everybody put your shirts on. They're going to be like, no, we do this here. We take our shirts off. I'm not saying take your shirts off.
Please don't do that.
But the same thing is true with the platforms. If you normalize the behavior, our community now, I dare people to go on Spill and like try and start some mess. You will get gobbled up so fast. Like we almost don't have to do anything at this point. Right. But more to the specific like psychological thing about it, people troll because they get engagement. Whether it's bad or good, they troll because they get engagement, they get attention, they get that dopamine hit. You're just not going to get that on Spill. You'll just be ignored and a little ostracized, and people just give you side eye and leave you alone. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, I was wondering, we have a bunch of entrepreneurs here, founders starting their own companies. What is your advice for you? You mentioned earlier you were really behind the scenes for a lot of the previous places you worked at. What is your advice for everyone here of, becoming an entrepreneur, but also like really building not only a social platform, but even a social following? I see your Instagram. Like, I know you were active on there. Do you think you have to be active as a founder on social or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think the first thing, especially for anyone that's like coming from like a long corporate career, or you have like a really dope expertise either in, the academic world, is understand that like starting a company is a battle, right? Like, and you have to kind of approach it with the offensive mindset that I think is very different than working at sort of larger companies. Once you are, the only thing that's going to sustain you through that truly is being passionate about solving a problem that you just can't get out of your head. Like the hate speech thing for me was just so flagrant. It was so visceral for me. I was just like, I can't not do anything about this, and I will go through anything because on the other side of that, it's got to be better than where we are now. So find that problem that you will continue fighting for through all types of discomfort, through poverty, through riches, through, ridicule, all of that, and that will be sort of your guiding light. I think after that, it's all about recruiting and team, right? And I was really fortunate to build relationships, and a lot of the people that we work with now, I built those relationships while I was at Twitter. And I started as a non-technical founder, so I was like, I want to build a platform. I don't write code right now. Right. How do I do that? And that's where your relationships, and you're never going to be able to do all the things at once. So all the solopreneurs, I know AI is coming. I know it's going to be helpful, but you need to build a strong team. So I'd say that's second. And then, your public, shout out to team building. Yeah, that's why you're here. Bring your team to South by. I think the third thing about being a public figure, this is awkward. I won't lie. I was behind the scenes for quite some time, and, I was a failed musician, and, all these kind of things. So I felt more comfortable in speaking in front of crowds. But when you're a startup founder, you're not talent, right? You're like, I'm offering a product and a solution, and people are going to tell you if your product or solution is helping or not. And so I think understand that selling the product oftentimes means selling the founders and the story and everything, and so it's a means to an end. But don't spend your day on Twitter. Maybe spend some time on Spill. We'll give you some love. But, don't spend your day out there trying to feel like you got to be the most popular kid in high school. Just build. Build a great product. Stay close with people. Make friends with Inc. magazine, and when you do that, they'll put you on the cover, and you'll be all set. It'll be good.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Don't all come at once.
You take it, sure.
You bring up AI, and I wanted to ask you about that with Spill. Are you integrating any new technologies, whether it is AI or just something different from the other platforms? I'm sure we're all kind of thinking, what are we going to do with AI in the future? So if you have any insight on that.
Yeah, I think we bucket AI too broadly, number one, and obviously we're in some ways the most ridiculous hype cycle of the last 20 years from a technology standpoint, and actually it's underhyped, right? And I think some people have said this really thoughtfully. I think it's really personal and individual. For me, the use cases for AI, particularly generative tools and how good they're getting, is for all the ideas people in the room, right? When you are thinking, man, I wonder if this plus that might make now you can prototype it for $20 a month and really see if you are a genius or not. Right. And I think building the key to the startup thing is just about building a really unstoppable iteration process, right? If you build the right team and you really focus on the right audience and the right problem, and you're like, we didn't get it, okay, let's learn, recycle, build again, did we get it? That's what AI can help speed up for you in certain instances, but it's not going to replace taste. Right? It's not going to replace a understanding of the problem that's going to matter to people ultimately when you need to bring a product to market. And I think, again, for the ideas people in the room, and especially the quote-unquote non-technical people, now there's no excuse. All of us need to become somewhat technical, right? Like, this is too much of an advantage, not to take advantage, not to, lean into it, but do not fall trap to I am, Fonz.ai, come da-da-da, it's got to be a real problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah, I mean, all entrepreneurs are always trying to solve a problem, so very good point on that. Question for you, obviously, your competitors are big competitors, but as an emerging platform, what are your biggest challenges? What's some of the ways you overcome these challenges or how you approach that? I know everyone here is probably facing a similar situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're bold. I mean, it sounds from a narrative standpoint like I just came out and tried to do a revenge app or something like that. But it's really not. I really felt that the medium of social media, just because it's so powerful, right? And we're still in the early days. The first 20 years of TV or radio or whatever, were messy as hell. And nobody knew what they were doing, And so this next generation, this next iteration of how we connect, share media, tell our stories, right? And really be able to empower individuals in ways that has just not been possible before. I think we're just scratching the surface. So I really see Spill not competing with old legacy models, right? Like, truly, the goal was never to replicate. And for anybody that wants to pop on, check it out, right? Like, we have games and big, we built the whole platform around memes. I love memes,
It brings it back to traditional social media where that was always just how you built the community.
100%. And I think the thing to exactly that point was social media really, we talk about media, but we don't talk about networking as much anymore. And I think when we're in this era now where people are looking to rediscover each other, and especially the younger generations, all they got was algorithms and influencers and just consumption, but they want to organize. They want to find each other. They want to find, build relationships of all sizes. Nobody's really servicing that right now at a scale. So in some ways, we're kind of bringing it all the way back, to the origins, but giving it a much more efficient, new, colorful spin.
And you mentioned algorithms, of course. All of them change quite often. The trends of social media changes so quickly, too. There was a point where pretty much every platform was like, I have to make a vertical video because TikTok. So how are you keeping up with trends when it comes to the social space? And also, what do you find worth your time? These trends, like I said, change quickly, but how do you approach these?
Yeah, I think you're going to lose if you're chasing trends, especially in this type of environment. And I think that goes for everything. I think it's really, again, going back to, not to be a broken record, but what is the problem set, right? And when you look at what's out there, the problem is not that we don't have enough vertical video in the space, right? The problem is people are trying to connect and they're beating up on each other, right? And we're rewarding that and incentivizing that. The problem is, especially these creators who drive the most value are not getting recognized and compensated for it properly. So that's a big focus for us from a creator, economy standpoint, and we can talk more about that and how we see about that. But the community really defines that for us, right? We had a lot of people who were like, I want more than, we had 90 characters because I'm a jerk like that. And everybody's like, I need to talk my more and, all that stuff. And so we thought about it, we built it in, we created a unique way to do that where you can actually story tell through a function we call slides versus just, essays, which we have everywhere else. And that format has been really successful for us. But there's other things we would have never done. So for folks who have heard of the card game Spades, this is a very popular card game at especially black barbecues and family gatherings and stuff. And our community was like, man, this is dope. I would love to play Spades on Spill. And nobody had really done a social version of this game before. And we were like, okay, why not? Let's try it. We launched this for Juneteenth last year. We've had over 500,000 minutes of Spades played on this app since then. That's every minute of every day for damn near a year. And the average time spent per player is 30 minutes. It's like watching an episode of TV.
Oh my goodness.
And so, again, we're really just trying to build with our community versus chase a trend. I think chase your community, serve your community, don't chase the trend.
Yes. We have some time left. I did want to end on something that builds more to the community. Tomorrow you have some very exciting things happening at Spill. You are actually about to launch an equity crowdfunding campaign. I lost my word for that round. So just how did you make that decision? I know the community is a big part of it, but if you could kind of tie into that and, it's launching tomorrow. So if anyone does join Spill today, maybe you have a stake in it.
Yeah, I think this is also part of the new era, right? This is stuff that actually literally wasn't even possible 20 years ago. But now we are in this era where creator equity, creator agency, the ability to monetize, all these things matter. And from day one, when we launched Spill, people were like, man, how can I get down? I want to invest in Spill, all this stuff. And when you're venture-backed, this is complicated, right? It's complicated anyway, but with investors, they all like, ugh, what is that? That's a weird signal. But as we've studied sort of the market over the last 2 years, and we've seen a lot of emerging platforms actually figure out models to do this, our community really motivated me to say, hey, I would love for people who are helping build Spill with their time, their energy, their creativity, to also be like, I own a piece. Come to my app, right? And be able to say, this is yours. So we just closed. We have raised over $6 million in venture funding to this point. And as part of this recent round, we're launching the Spill Own the Conversation campaign tomorrow. So we're releasing about $1 million in equity that people can invest in. It is pretty wild. Tomorrow's going to be wild. I'll just say this. But I really encourage people, especially who are passionate about building the future of how we connect and really ensuring we don't see this as just a means to raise capital at all. Frankly, it's much more about giving the community who's putting all that effort a stake. If you could have been early on Twitter, if you could have been early on Facebook, if you could have been early on whatever, a lot of these companies started here. How would that have changed things? So that's what we want to test and put out into the world, and I'm really excited about it.
No, it's a very exciting time, and I highly recommend all of you join Spill. So, Fonz, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was great.
Thank you, guys.